engaged intensely in another Middle Eastern struggle. I think all will probably do varying degrees of saber-rattling. They may do, I mean, Professor Petrarca's call for a declaration of war reminded me of Obama's profoundly duplicitous position vis-a-vis the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons. If you remember, the president had drawn a line in the sand. Was it a line in the sand or a red line? It was some sort of a line that he drew somewhere and then erased. And the president, as he was talking about taking military action against the Assad regime, said that he wouldn't do anything unless he got a vote from Congress, both the House and the Senate. And of course he took that position because he knew they wouldn't provide him with the vote. So rather than being courageous and saying something else, he was duplicitous. And my suspicion is that all of the candidates will do saber-rattling, but all will be energetically committed to keeping anything beyond a minimal number of American technical advisors off the ground in the Middle East.
Yeah, I agree with that. But at least the
That's the first really smart thing he said. So clever.
But you didn't hear the but. The but is that the individuals who are running on the Republican side, who are currently elected officials, do have some, as Lucy might have said on the I Love Lucy show, splaining to do. They've been sitting on a request by the President of the United States for an authorization to do what he's already doing. Now, I agree with all of you. That sounds like a pretty stupid way to do business. I'm going to go ahead and do it, and then I'm going to ask your permission to do it. Now, of course, the President doesn't need their permission. What he's looking for is a little bit of a political wedding. Let's join hands. But we're not prepared to go all the way. We're not going to consummate our relationship, right? We just want to hold hands. That way, the President has some political cover. And so Ted Cruz and others who are running, who are members of the United States Senate, they have to be prepared to explain to the American people why they're not prepared to do this minimalistic thing that the President of the United States has asked them to do now back in February. There probably will be a more strongly anti-war Democrat running. It's likely to be Chafee from the great and powerful and very large state of Rhode Island. Rumored to be running for office. Eventually, someone will discover whether or not he is, and he will probably carry the anti-war banner, which lots of people will rally behind. Because let's face it, we all sit here in the comfort of knowing that no one in this room is going to be drafted. That's a rather delicate position to be in, isn't it? Few of you, I don't want to suggest that none of you would, but few of you will sign up and volunteer. You've got other things to do with your life. And isn't it convenient, hasn't it been convenient for 70 plus years, with the exception of the Vietnam War, to rely on, and especially in the post-Vietnam era, where we have fought the two longest wars in American history, isn't it convenient to depend on people who don't have too many other options to volunteer to be cannon fodder around the world? And there'll be anti-war protests on this campus by people who would not volunteer to take their place in an instant. And that's why the elected officials will go a little ways, they won't go too far, because they know going all the way, committing this country to total war through a declaration of war, is going to require, as a part of prosecuting the war successfully, because remember, we've never declared a war that we didn't win, it's going to require national selective service. Men and women being called for a period of time to serve their country. Good.
You know, with two Cuban Americans in the race, I hope we give Ricky Ricardo his due as well.
Is he the person who said explain it to me? Sorry. Okay.
One more question now for Professor Petrarca here in the front.
talking? I can't see you. Right. Oh, sorry.
It's been said that this is a war, if we're waging war on the Islamic State or ideology. So my question is, wouldn't waging war on the Islamic State breed like a bad culture where, because there's a lot of cities in Iraq where they are sympathetic to ISIS, like in Mosul, and they don't feel like these people are helping them. So, isn't it beneficial for us to maintain a good image where we're not going these cities or things like that?
Is that a question for me? Because my initial starting point after quoting Mark Antony in tonight's debate was that we are already at war. Bombers are already flying over those cities, dropping bombs. And are you suggesting that somehow sending ground troops in would be worse than seeing the underbelly of a B-52? I don't know whether or not we're using B-52s to block, probably not.
But
That would be worse.
saying that we're declaring war on the Islamic State, and then I'm sure we would do more.
Why treat barbarians with such delicacy? Oh, we don't want to hurt your feelings? Please don't videotape your next beheading, because we hate watching. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's more of the symbolic action of declaring war that I'm concerned about.
Well, I would argue that part of our problem in the Middle East over the last 15 years is that we have, as I've already said, we didn't declare war when we should have. Going back to 1991, when we intervened to save Kuwait from an Iraqi invasion. If it was worth doing, worth spending US dollars and US lives on, we should have declared war. We didn't. We should have then declared war after 9/11 if there was reason to believe that the people we had a right to be mad at were the people that were in Iraq. And I'm not going to litigate that here right now. And then we should have declared war on Afghanistan as well for harboring those who had done us harm. Give them a period of time to produce bin Laden and the other terrorists, no problem. Tick, 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 the clock is up. Here come the United States Marine Corps. I mean, I don't think that it's reasonable or good foreign policy, to use a phrase that Professor Schoenfeld has used a number of times, that it's good foreign policy to behave delicately, both with those who are currently doing harm to their own innocents and are threatening harm to this nation. We fought a war against Japan, we fought a war against Germany, in which we obliterated those two countries. You couldn't find closer allies to the United States today, except for maybe Great Britain. It's what you do afterwards that ends up mattering, not how you prosecute the war. You prosecute the war to win, and a war that is fought, currently being waged, without a proper declaration of war, will not be won. It'll just become another political swamp for people to step into, politicians in this country, and people will continue to die.
Well, thank you both very much.
We'll now, we'll now turn it over to Professor Schoenfeld for the first of the panel.
One of the big challenges that we face here is many of our ideas of foreign relations are derived from a history of struggles between nation states. Chamberlain, as head of the nation state of Great Britain, negotiated with representatives of the nation state of Germany. We're not dealing with a nation state when we deal with the Islamic State. We're dealing with a group, to use, I think, an acceptable term, of terrorists, barbarians, choose the word, who control a certain amount of territory, don't believe in being a state. I mean, they're not trying to become a state. What they're trying to do is they believe that they are the rightful heirs of Islam, and they are trying to take over all followers of Islam and to lead them. In the somewhat different way, Al-Qaeda wasn't a state. And that causes a lot of problems to figure out how we behave. Because states are really nice. We know who belongs. There may be some spies, but I know we've got people who've got passports and they're citizens and they live in a certain place. Here, we don't have that advantage in dealing with these enemies. And we have to adapt the way we deal with them to that very fundamentally different reality. We did not do that in Afghanistan or in Iraq. We pretended that those places that were nation states were the problems which led to 9/11. No one could sit down and argue that the world is safer, less violent today than it was before September 11th. Quite to the contrary, things have gotten worse. One strategy that we have failed to pursue is the strategy which I tried to outline as being most logical. And that was a strategy that there are a set of people here who are all our enemies. Hezbollah is our enemy. The Iranians are our enemies. The Assad regime in Syria is our enemy. ISIS is our enemy. These are all our enemies. If they are fighting among themselves, it makes no sense for us to try to separate the combatants. The only thing that makes sense, which I tried to argue, is for us to do what we can to mitigate those features of spillover to innocent civilian populations. There I think we can make progress. As we get engaged, the Professor Petrarca used the model of Chamberlain and appeasement. The only thing that might sort of parallel look like that in all the things taking place is the negotiations taking place in Switzerland between Iran and the United States and the other Western powers. That might be subject to parallel analysis to what Chamberlain was doing before World War II. With these other things there, it is totally irrelevant. We must look at what the context is and figure out what is our interest. And our interest is that none of these forces thrive. That's clear and unequivocal. And none of us can rank order their degrees of evilness. We might be able to rank order their degrees of danger, and if we did that, I'd put the Iranians at the top of the pile. Consequently, if that's true, then the idea of declaring war is going to accomplish absolutely nothing. Number one, who do we declare it against? Number two, how do we win it? How is it over? We know how it was over in Japan, and we know how it was over in Germany. There's no way of thinking of an empirical parallel in this particular engagement and this particular struggle. So I would urge that we learn from the mistakes we've made in the past. We certainly shouldn't repeat them, nor should we accentuate them. And I think the strategy that I identified is reasonable, while I think the declaration of war is not. Thank you.
I want to take a moment to express both my appreciation and affection for Professor Schoenfeld, who's been doing these debates with me twice a year for the last 8 years. He promises me that he's going to continue to do them until he finally gets one right. All be assured that we'll be doing these for many more years to come. Let me begin with the alternative reasonable solution that Professor Schoenfeld has proposed to the morass that is the Middle East. Let all of our enemies kill each other. Slowly, brutally, however they want. There are two problems with this approach. Number one, while they're killing each other, they could very well start killing us. And number two, let's not forget, I seem to remember that there's an important U.S. ally in that part of the world who feels a little threatened by the Iranians, the Syrians, ISIS, and other not too friendly people. That nation state is Israel. Better that we would declare war on ISIS ourselves than be dragged into a war by Israel doing something unilaterally. Now, this country in the 20th century was always reluctant to go to war. Wars had started already, world wars had started already without us. World War I started without us, World War II started without us. And it wasn't as though we hadn't been invited. We had. We just decided not to go. And we decided not to go because the American public was reluctant. Precipitating events led to declarations of war. And that reluctant public, for the most part, got behind the war effort. So the argument that Americans don't currently support a declaration of war doesn't mean they won't once they see that the U.S. government is something that it is not on almost any other issue, united in its approach to this grave threat. I mean, if it's not a grave threat, let's not call it that. If it's really a significant opportunity to amuse ourselves by watching those who would do us ill and who would do each other ill, kill each other, then let's get more television cameras over there so that we can sit at home comfortably and watch it on TV. But I trust that a grave threat means exactly that. Is there any other kind? Professor Schoenfeld doesn't like the Iranians. He's very upset that we might be fighting alongside them in our common effort to destroy this group that wishes to create an Islamic caliphate, a nation state by another name. I'll remind Professor Schoenfeld, and I know that he doesn't need to be reminded, that U.S. military personnel fought side by side along Stalinist troops during the Second World War from the Soviet Union. That was probably unpleasant, probably not a delightful experience to be fighting alongside communists, but they were our allies. And if the Iranians are our allies here, thank goodness for it. I want you to remember three things. One, this country wins declared wars. We are currently at war, even though we have not declared it. The President of the United States is currently making war, and we are intentionally killing people in that part of the world without a declaration. We win declared wars, and we need to win this war. Second, a declaration of war opens up a variety of international, legal, and domestic law opportunities for the prosecution, indeed the successful prosecution of the war. That is not going to happen under the status quo, in which the President does not have congressional authorization, nor would it happen if Congress were to vote tomorrow morning, as I suspect they won't, despite my persuasiveness this evening, for the authorization that the President has asked for. And the third thing to remember is the sense of national purpose, about which we have no other sense and have not had in this country for a very, very long period of time. Some would say going back to the Second World War. Is this threat to the nation as serious a threat as fascism is? Was. Maybe not yet. But then I go back to my opening remarks and my rebuttal. How long do we wait for the Schoenfeld wait and see, let our enemies kill each other strategy to work, so that either all our enemies lie dead on a battlefield in which Americans have had to spill no blood, or our enemies decide to take the war home here? I don't want to wait a moment more. And I suggest you not either. Write your congressman tomorrow morning. Thank you very much, and thank you.
It's our various artificial body parts.
Thank you all very much. I think we're now going to have a closing comment from the Ambassadors Council.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. We appreciate your time and on this Thursday night at 7 o'clock, so we really do appreciate that. But I want to thank Professor Petrarca and Professor Shanto for coming and bringing their points to us and allowing us to have a part of their time. And of course, their charismatic personalities, because without them two, the Hot Topics debate would not be possible. So thank you again for your time, your appreciation to the Dean's Ambassadors Council as well. Thank you.
For those of you who came in late, I talked a little bit about the Dean's Ambassadors Council. So other than great events like this one, we put on a lot of other events to bridge the gap that exists between students, faculty, and staff. My name is Julie, and I'll be the exec chair next year. And I would love for you all to apply. There's an insert in your programs about the application, which is due tomorrow. So I look forward to seeing your applications. We'd now like to take the chance to thank the professors with some gifts that we've gotten them. So please come up.
Looks like an alcohol beverage.
What you're talking about. Choco, we really appreciate your time. For everyone else, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. It's late, I know. There's refreshments outside, there's coffee, and some really great pieces, so I hope you enjoy them. Thank you.
That's good. I don't think I have the time for it, the time capacity. No, what? The time to apply for it. Hold on. Yes. Because I'll think about it.
But we gotta pick a date though.
Okay, I'll think about it. Are we gonna take a picture? She's not here. Yeah.
I think you're fine if you want to.
Yeah, it's not gonna come.
Like, it's fine. There's a lot of.
Yeah. We'll have to do another one. Bye. Bye. Oh my God.
Do we have the sign-up sheet? Just because Professor Petrarca wanted to know, like, the head count. Why? No, there's a sign-up sheet in the front. Oh. Yeah. Teresa. Do you know where Jessica? Jessica.
That is a bit scary.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, she's gonna be great.
I
love working with first years personally. Oh, okay. You have a chance. And she's in Shakespeare, right?
Yeah.
Yep.